Okay, let's have some fun with Audiosuite plugins. Specifically, we're going to reverse some stuff and have some fun with it. We're also going to learn a couple things in here, and it's really not about doing exactly what I'm doing, but taking these creative tools and adding them to your palette, hopefully. So I have a chord change here, chord progression. I have a drum sample, so we have audio and MIDI. Let's take a listen. All right, you get the idea. So what we're going to do is take a look, and we're going to do a few things. First and foremost, one thing that we often do before we send our tracks off to mix, or we transfer a session from one computer to another room, what have you, is we do what's called committing our tracks. And that is the process of taking our MIDI tracks and converting them to audio. And we do that so that there's no compatibility issues between virtual instruments. Hey, that room hasn't been updated to the new version of Contact, what have you. There's also another reason, which is virtual instruments tend to be pretty heavy users of your processor and RAM, much less so than audio tracks themselves. So here's a very easy way of doing that. You have a MIDI track or an instrument track. You can hit Control and click on the nameplate, or you can right click and you'll see the word commit. And when you hit commit, it is going to bring up this dialog box. And really, I'm just going to change this or keep it as do nothing, but you can always just hide and make the tracks inactive so you don't lose your MIDI, but it will just kind of hide over here in the track list. But I'm going to have it do nothing. I'm going to have it copy it or commit everything. So here we go. Hit OK. It's processing. So basically what it's doing is it's taking, all of these MIDI, the sound of the instrument, which by the way is being driven somewhere else, so don't worry that you don't see an instrument inserted. All the notes, you did have the choice of whether to maintain things like automation, velocity, etc. And it converted it to audio. Okay, exact same as this one, except now it's audio. So as part of this, so there's that. Committing your tracks, again, very, very common to do with all of your tracks when you're getting ready to mix it so that you can free up some resources or send it off somewhere to avoid compatibility issues. But you can also do some really creative stuff with it. And instead of committing it, it was the same thing. I'm going to show you another way of committing or converting to audio, that is. This is a stereo track. So I'm going to make a stereo audio track. And I'm going to call it keys rev because I'm going to play with some reversing. And when I have MIDI data, all I need to do is drag it down onto my audio track, and I am getting some audio. All right, so I have the same exact thing. I want to be able to, so here's the deal. Let's go to Audiosuite and talk about that for a second, and then talk about some thoughts ahead of time. So what Audiosuite is instead of saying going to your real-time EQ and tweaking it, you would go to Audiosuite, go to your EQ and tweak it, and then you would bake that in to the audio file. So if I hit render here, you're going to see that it got quieter, mostly because I cut all this low end out of it. And now it sounds just like it did before. Now I can still undo it here, but once you save your session and walk away, these audio files become kind of baked in. You still have the clip list, and we'll talk about that more. This is more about the creative idea. So I want to play with the other category, reversing. So I choose reverse, and I could hit render and reverse this entire clip. So that's what I'm going to do first. Now, what you're going to notice, let's see what you notice. So I think it sounds pretty cool, but it just took this entire clip and flipped it. So my chord progression's gone now. And it's an ascending progression going up instead of descending, coming down. If I played both of these together, it's not a vibe because we have, two completely different chords playing against each other. They might sound good in sequence, but they don't sound good in concert. They don't sound good together. So what we need to do, and we can do this different ways, and I think the easiest way is actually to go ahead and cut up our chords and then drag them down individually. I could cut up the audio, and that may have been faster actually, now that I think about it. But I can just drag these down. Actually, I think, let me see if I can do this. Sometimes I learn things as I try and teach them. Let's drag all these. Let's see if they maintain. I bet they're not. Yeah, they did. Okay, so they maintain the cuts. So that's kind of cool for me to learn. All right. I'm already here something I'm a little concerned about, but that's okay. We're going to deal with it later. So now I'm going to highlight each of these individually, and I'm going to render them so that they maintain the sequence of the chord change. Okay, so bit of a pain, but we bleed for our art. It's okay. And we get this. Now what I heard, and I still hear it reversed in a different way, is I hear this, the reversing, but then I also hear like a little kind of a click at the transition from clip to clip or chord to chord. So for that, I'm going to highlight all these, and I hope this works. I'm not entirely sure. I'm going to put crossfades, which are very, very short fades, not a kind of fade that's going to really audibly be heard like this, although that could be cool too. These are going to be very, very short. So I'm highlighting all my tracks, all my clips, so that I have each cut highlighted. I'm going to hit Command F, which brings up the batch fade window. And I'm actually just going to experiment with this standard kind of X fade. It is defaulted at 10 milliseconds. I can make it shorter or longer if I wanted to. And I'm going to hit OK. And let's take a look at what that actually did before we listen to it. It literally put this little cross hatch there. And the idea with that is that when you're editing audio, you want to do it at a very specific point called the zero crossing. And if you don't, it can introduce pops and clicks. And these fades usually help to address that. Still kind of there, but it's a lot less. I'm going to try, I took it out. Let's try 20. See, I still hear it there. Not so much there, but it's kind of cool anyways. All right, so there's like one example of reversing. Another thing I could try, let's say I want to do something with these drums. The only thing that I can really think of at the moment, because I don't want to take this whole thing and reverse it, although let's check it out. By the way, I think it's Johnny Royale by the Beastie Boys, or one of those songs is that, and it's pretty cool. But what I want to try and do, I'm going to undo that. Don't forget your Command Z. I'm going to just take this snare drum. I'm going to delete everything. I'm just going to render. Take that, go into slip mode, and let's see if I can move it to kind of give us like almost a little riser into the snare drum. Okay, it's flamming. Don't forget that cool term, flamming. So we're getting kind of two transients here. All right, so we can perfect this. I'm going to fade this in so it does get a little bit more dramatic. Let's see if I fade that out. Still got the flam going. There we go. Not perfect, but I'm not going to take the time to fix it. But hopefully you get the idea. You can do some pretty creative stuff. All right, so a couple different things to play around with converting audio to, or converting MIDI to audio, and using reverse in your Audiosuite plugins.